Hey guys, Fatty here, and today we're gonna go ahead and tackle stats. I'm gonna run through all these stats first, and then after we kind of like review them, I'm gonna go ahead and give you crucial tips towards the middle and end of this video, which is especially crucial for everybody, but especially for people that want to do damage, right? So let's go ahead and start for now. So strength. Strength by description will give you defense, which is the regular defense that you see in the middle there, and then it will also give you max health. Max health is one of the most crucial stats in the game because it is crucial for you to have in order to survive a lot of people's bursts. And not only that, but the upcoming TTK changes, which is time to kill, which is basically going to be making people harder to kill. Max health and its value increases even more. And the next one that we have is health regen. So health regen hasn't really been the most impressive or useful of stats. It's kind of like nice to have if it like just by being there, because it regenerates a certain amount of HP every 10 seconds. So like right now you can see that I'm in town, but so my health regen is boosted. It is at 1104. So that's basically 1.1k HP every 10 seconds. So you basically divide that by 10, and then I'm healing for around 110 HP per second. Even though that sounds good, the reason why it is not as appealing back then, and even with the new changes, it doesn't seem as appealing even now, is because it is severely stunted by poison. Poison basically from dagger, what it does is it per stack it decreases the effectiveness of healing. So it's nice to have, but it's not something that we should prioritize. Now max damage and min damage is basically what you see here. So this is what's going to be separating strength versus like dexterity and wisdom along with perception, because strength and perception add a certain amount of min damage and then max damage, right? So let's say add 10 strength here. You can see our base damage is at 29 to 47 currently, and then we're going to branch off to dexterity now. So the similarities that dexterity and wisdom have is basically the fact that dexterity and wisdom only increase max damage and not min damage. So I add 10 strength, you can see it goes 2947, and if I add 10 dexterity, it is going to add 0 minimum and then more maximum. Now that might make it sound a little less appealing, but the reason why that is crucial, and this is not just for people who want to do damage, but basically anybody who has a certain amount of critical rate or crit rate in this game is basically based off of your max damage. Simply speaking, critical rate in this game is a max roll of your damage. And that's why you want to, if you're a DPS especially, then you really want to build dexterity and wisdom over strength because of that fact, right? And that is further increased by critical damage that you can get with or from certain pieces like the Reaper set. And of course, before we head over all the way to dexterity, you can see that there are 4 set bonuses here for strength. If we click at the bottom here, you can see that 30 strength will give you a max health of 750, damage reduction, heavy attack, and then max health 900. So that's kind of like part of what you need to plan out on once you decide on what's going to be your build, because depending on the equipment that you equip, they'll give you a certain amount of these stats. And then you kind of just use the rest of your points up here to try to reach those breakpoints, those bonuses, essentially, right? For dexterity, dexterity will increase your quickness. They call it quickness, but really it's just attack speed. You can kind of like see once you increase dexterity over here, attack speed is, and essentially attack speed is crucial for every class, not just DPS. For tanks, it's crucial as well because it dictates essentially the animation speed of your skills. Why is that crucial? There are certain skills that are able to just deal more DPS the higher attack speed that you have. Not only that, but it's also crucial when you're doing your combos, because if your attack speed is too slow, let's say you're trying to do a stun into a knockdown, right? Let's say you're trying to do a stun and then you're trying to do like damage in between, and before that stun ends, you're trying to do a knockdown. if your attack speed is too slow, what's going to happen is you're going to be stunning somebody. You're trying to fill that gap in between while they're stunned before you KD, so you have your max DPS applied to the person, and then they end up getting away because you didn't have enough attack speed to put out that combo before they actually get free of your CC, right? So that's why attack speed is crucial. And then the next thing it gives is critical attacks, which is, as we discussed earlier, which is your crit rate. And not just that, but it also gives you evasion. Not only is this crucial for DPS in terms of damage, but it's also crucial for DPS in terms of survivability, because most of the time, if your DPS, you're not going to be building endurance, because endurance is not that popular of a stat currently, because you're squishy already, and not allowing somebody to crit, which is what endurance is, it's the anti-crit stat, is not going to be enough for you to survive. You need to actually evade a certain amount of attacks for you to be able to survive, right? And so that's why evasion is important. And the last part of that right there is it gives you max damage, right? And we kind of discussed that already for DPS. If you want to increase the total damage that you do, because again, it's two things, right? It's critical, which is your max damage, which is affected by critical damage, and of course heavy attack, which is basically ×2 of your final damage. So that's why it's so crazy, because not only is your max damage higher value because of critical damage when you crit, but it's even higher value ×2 when you heavy attack, because you can crit and heavy attack at the same time. So imagine getting the max value for your max attack, and then you crit, and then that doubles again when you have a heavy attack proc at the same time. So that's kind of like why it's really, really good. The bonus effects for dexterity is 30, which is pretty easy to get, which is crit 100. The next one is bonus damage 15, and then movement speed, and then crit rate. So bonus damage is basically just bonus damage on top of what you're already doing. There's a difference between bonus damage and base damage. Those are going to be very, very important details to take note of. And it's really important to kind of differentiate bonus damage and then base damage, right? Because bonus damage is basically just added on top of your final damage. So that's not as huge for classes that are bursty, like bow or greatsword, whereas it is going to see a lot higher value for weapons like crossbow, because crossbow has a lot of multi-hits, and each of those multi-hits essentially gets that bonus damage 15, so that's huge for them. And then obviously on 60 you see their critical hit, another plus 120 on top of the 100, and then at 50 you get movement speed 5%, which is essentially just basically how fast you run. But another detail to that they don't really quite tell you, I don't think, is that it also speeds up your morphing as well. When you're using your dash morph, it's going to make that a bit faster, because the sooner that you morph, the sooner you get the speed boost from morphing. That means that you're going to be able to either, number one, chase somebody down faster, or number two, get away faster, right? So that's essentially dexterity. And then wisdom, it's kind of like the reverse of strength, because in strength, the maximum health was high value, whereas in this case, max mana, while it still has value, it's not as valuable as max health. In this situation though, whereas like health regen is not as valuable to us, mana regen however is, because in this game you don't have mana potions that give you a burst of mana or recover a flat amount of mana, for example. What it gives you, however, is just more mana regen. And in this game, if you run out of mana, your DPS drops to almost zero, right? Basically nothing. So that's why mana regen is crucial in this game, and wisdom does give you that. And then in addition to that, it also gives you cooldown, which is CDR, cooldown reduction, and max damage, the same thing as dexterity. So what it doesn't tell you in this tooltip, however, that in order to get cooldown, you need to put in 2 points of wisdom first. So 2 points of wisdom will give you 0.5 CDR, and you can see it on the side here, right? So if you're speccing wisdom, you always want to make sure that you have even numbers. If there's like an odd number there, 13 doesn't add it. 14 adds 0.5. So that is the crucial thing when you are trying to put up your wisdom along with your gear as you progress is that you always want to keep it as an even number. And then for the bonus effects is max mana, which is nice, debuff duration, which is basically debuffs last less time on you, and cooldown speed, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then more max mana at 60 wisdom with 900 max mana, which really nobody actually wants. And then the next part here, which is perception, which is again my own personal advice, is everybody that starts out the game, you're gonna start out with 10 base perception. I do highly advise people to get their perception all the way up to 30. 30 base. I don't think this is quite negotiable because in this game, hit rate is such a crucial stat. So getting it to 30 alone will give you 200 hit. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a tank, it doesn't matter if you're a DPS, because number one, if your damage misses, you do no damage. If you're a tank and you're trying to CC somebody, for example, if your CC misses, the CC doesn't get applied and it also does no damage, right? So that's why you really need hit. Even your provokes can miss. So that's why perception is the most recommended. You never want to go past 30 base perception, because after that, or for any stat, it starts costing 2 points. So it's not really worth it, right? So besides the accuracy, it also increases CC effect. If you move over to CC here, you can see that it also boosts CC chance. So that's why it's crucial, right? It boosts your hit rate as is, and it also fights against resistances that people may build towards your CC, right? So it's double the effectiveness in terms of that. And then enhances time boost abilities. Well, it's just kind of a fancy way of saying buff duration. One of the reasons why you would also want this is because you want to prolong certain buffs that your class offers. And for example, for tanks, that is going to be counter barrier or fortress, but especially counter barrier, which is something that we really need in order to increase our chances of survival. Otherwise, we're just nowhere near as tanky, right? So I think it's somewhere down here. Yes, there you go. So it's not the same as wisdom, where you need 2 points to get 0.5. Each point adds 0.5, and 2 points actually add 1%. It also increases max damage and min damage, and you can see it here. It's the same as strength, and then you can see the bonuses here. The reason why I want people to get 30 perception right away is because getting to 30 perception alone, besides the hit that you're already gaining here with a 200 hit for melee, ranged, and magic, you're also getting an additional hit plus 100. And we've discussed buff duration already, but for range, obviously, if you're a ranged class, it increases your range, but other things that range increases is also the travel distance. So let's say you're a dagger user, right? Your gap closers increase range. If you're greatsword, your gap closers, your dashes increase range. If you're a sword and shield, your dashes, your drastic charge, that also has increased range. It also increases range of your pull, of your chain hook. And that's why it's so good. That's why I don't want people sleeping on perception. So hopefully that kind of helps you understand the stats a little bit more. But for now, that's what I'm going to leave you with. I want you guys to kind of understand this, because building the right stat and planning out your stat distribution along with your planned gear from blues to tier 1 purples to tier 2 purples eventually. So yeah, hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, again, leave it in the comments below. Join our Discord, or catch me at twitch.tv/littlefattygg. And then yeah, I'll see you guys on launch. Peace.